Just like every other child in the world, I'm sure you wanted to go to space. As children, we're shown these coloring books and stories about outer space, and some of us are so inspired that we dedicate our lives to train to become an astronaut. Now, let's imagine this is you. You train to become an astronaut. You go through a million degrees, bachelor's degrees that is, and at least 3 years of related professional experience obtained after degree completion, and at least 1,000 hours of pilot in command training in the jet aircraft. You do all of this just so when you get into the spacecraft and go into space, you can see the beautiful Earth. You hop into the rocket, you hear the T minus countdown. T minus 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. You blast off. You look out the window to see the beautiful Earth you've been waiting to see since you were a child. You're waiting to see your coloring books come to life, and all those documentaries that your parents make you watch. You want to see all the wonders of the Earth, the beautiful, tall, glistening mountains, to the deepest and darkest of seas and oceans. You go to see for yourself. Instead of seeing the beautiful, amazing, green and beautiful Earth, all you see is a gray, lifeless sphere. Now, this in part is actually due to us, humans. Now, don't get me wrong, I am all in for space exploration, but it is severely limited when there's a huge layer of trash surrounding us. You see, when a spacecraft is being built, engineers make a system where the rocket uses up one of its fuel tanks, and after it does, it releases it into space. This is so that the aircraft doesn't have to carry an empty piece of metal with it as it travels. And this piece of metal just sits up in space orbiting our Earth. This is a real issue. Space pollution isn't something that's going to happen in a light year or something that's predicted to happen in the future. It's happening right now. And this issue isn't even new. It's been going on for a long time. Space debris has been building up for decades, and there's a huge layer of metal and paint from our spacecraft orbiting the Earth. You may think that we only have 3 to 4 launches a year, but according to the European Space Agency, these launches build up over time and have accumulated over 1,129 million pieces of debris, just as of January 2019. Imagine how many there are this year. This is a huge problem. If this is what we have to look at every time we want to look up at the sky, this is going to be a huge problem. And in order to solve this, let us explore what is actually causing it, its radiational effect on us, and finally, I'll give you a plan that could solve this problem. And let's blast it off. Obviously, like every other type of pollution, this was caused by humans. But don't worry, there is a solution. According to Global.com, the causes of pollution are used up rocket stages, loose fragments from rocket explosions, and collisions. Abandoned satellites are also considered space junk. All of these pieces of metal contribute to the Kessler syndrome. The Kessler syndrome states that even if all of humankind stops spacecraft, these objects in space will continue to collide and collide to make infinite amount of debris. This is essentially an infinite cycle that indefinitely makes debris crash into each other, making smaller and smaller debris every single time. This alone should tell you how much of a problem space pollution is. But this isn't all. An example of an old and decommissioned spacecraft is the Vanguard 1 that was launched all the way back in 1958. Another cause of space debris is as simple as an astronaut letting go of a tool during spacewalks, such as a wrench. These tiny pieces do more damage than large pieces. A small piece moving at a high velocity would be much more effective than a larger object moving at a slower rate. Now, let's explore how space pollution directly affects us. A huge effect of this is that these pieces are actually coming down to Earth. Now, this may sound crazy, Some of these pieces do burn up in the atmosphere, but there have been real life examples of this actually happening. An example of this is the PAM-D model that crashed down in Saudi Arabia. Another instance is when a burning piece of metal landed on a woman's shoulder. Imagine this happening to you. This was part of a fuel tank from a US Air Force satellite. This is a serious problem. It is quite literally raining flaming metal. A woman named Lottie Williams was just taking a walk in a park with her two friends when she saw a fireball streaking through the skies. She tells Fox News that half an hour later, she felt a knock on her shoulder, and she finds a hot piece of metal on the ground and a scar on her shoulder. Thankfully, she was not hurt. It was just a little piece. It is important to remember where space debris actually comes from. The space debris comes from rockets. These rockets were made to withstand the fiery forces of gravity, meaning that they're really durable and strong, meaning that when this space debris actually does come back to Earth, not all of it will burn in the Earth's atmosphere. Remember the PAM-D model in Saudi Arabia? This costs us solar panels and decommissions them. These space debris that orbit our atmosphere ruins our solar panels that are currently orbiting and powering our satellites. A 2-ton spacecraft called the Sentinel-1A has space debris that has crashed into its power and ruined its ability to generate power. Stuart Clark, an astronomy journalist, states that if nothing is being done in order to fix this, it will only get worse. Holger Krog, at the 7th opening of the European Space Conference on space debris, says that the outcome may have been much more severe. This was a very lucky instance. Thankfully, the space debris did not hit one of the most important systems on the Sentinel-1A. If it had hit systems such as those that allow the satellite to communicate back to Earth, the whole satellite would have been deemed useless as it can't communicate back to us. The space debris could have also hit one of our GPS satellites, which would have thrown everything into chaos. Armies would lose all control over drones monitoring natural disasters or surveilling terrorist outfits. Weather forecasts would be totally off, and digital television and radio will not be able to work. After exploring the causes and effects, let's explore a proposed solution. There is no direct way for us to actually help solve space debris issues other than donating to companies such as Astroscale. But the US government can actually help through the use of their federal budget. First, more than 90% of the money the government gives to NASA must be used to solve this problem. To help explain this a little more, NASA's budget in 2020 represents 0.48% of the United States federal budget, and of this budget given to NASA, 90% of it should go to solving the space debris problem. There are many prototypes being constructed and tested. Some of these launches are occurring in the late 2023s, and this is a problem that needs to be fixed now. Recently, the mission to Mars has released another piece of huge metal in the atmosphere. More countries are starting to go to space more and more often, and more space debris is building up, and prototypes in late 2023 and 2025 aren't going to help with this issue. More commercial airlines are also starting to build space rockets, and they also contribute to the space debris that is building up. Jeff Faust has a PhD in planetary sciences and writes that Astroscale, a space debris removal company, has raised over $50 million for this cause and has sped up prototype testing. Thanks to companies like Astroscale, we can see that it is actually possible to help solve the space debris issue by getting more funding, meaning that the US government can actually help through this 90% proposed plan. Some of this money should also go to help developing strategies that doesn't release space debris into the atmosphere every time we travel to space. This will drastically decrease the amount of garbage in orbit, as there won't be situations as the Vanguard 1 floating in space. This solves the Kessler syndrome as well, since these prototypes will aim to remove these pieces from orbit. Another way you as a general audience could help is by donating to these space debris removal companies such as Astroscale. This 90% may sound like a lot, but this 90% is only until this issue gets solved, after which it will go back to normal. Projects conducted by the ESA, a European Space Agency, shows that these prototypes will actually work when being implemented. They just struggle in funding. The ESA says that a certain amount of debris has to be removed each year in order to prevent the Kessler syndrome from occurring. And this is a solution that solves for this problem. Right now, I have explained to you how it's quite literally raining flaming metal and how this is affecting us. In a few more years, the sky won't be blue, it will be gray. I have also explained to you what is causing the pollution and will eventually probably lead to deaths. We have recently started to eliminate fossil fuels by using solar panels in space for powering our spacecraft. But unfortunately, there is space debris currently in the atmosphere that is destroying them. This just causes more and more problems. But back to the point. We don't have to ruin children's dreams, we don't have to ruin our Earth. When you look out the window of the spacecraft, you will see the glistening Earth. If the US would implement this plan, we wouldn't have to look up at gray skies or be afraid of being hit by flaming metal. Eventually, we will have a ring around the Earth, just like Saturn. But instead of beautiful, majestic rings, it will be a ring of thrash. Thank you for listening.